Well, you had to expect that we would have this kind of title because everyone's having their play on words for the OnePlus model this week, and we're just going to chime right in.
Okay.
But before we get into the actual product that they launched, I actually have somewhat of a intriguing question here, and I feel like its time has come. So with everyone trying to adjust and convert over to USB-C due to the EU, do you think it's time that we have a universal charger for smartwatches? And I mean, I guess I would clarify that by saying smartwatches and not trackers, because I feel like trackers will always have unique chargers because they're a different format.
Yeah, you mean like something like that Apple has, where it's just a little...
Anything from the Galaxy Watch to an Apple Watch to a Pixel Watch, et cetera, stuff like that.
I don't know, because you think the easiest answer would be yes. That way you wouldn't be spending a whole lot of money. However, and maybe I'm thinking about this incorrectly, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like...
the DA.
Well, yeah. Yes. I feel like with watches, that's a little bit different than phones, because generally speaking, it's not that difficult to have a basic port in every single phone, which is why I've always wondered for years why it took Apple so stinking long to add USB-C finally. But with watches, I don't know. I feel like there's a little more lenience on those, mainly because maybe that particular watch needs that type of charger, or, you know, every watch needs its own for marketing's sake. I don't have as much of an issue with there being different, like a plethora of watches in this ecosystem of technology. However, I can also see why most, and maybe you as well, I would think, might argue for there being a universal watch charger.
Well, I realize that not everyone is like me, because I've got like 3 chargers here. I've got a Samsung Galaxy charger for the watch. I've got a Pixel watch charger, and I've got an Apple Watch charger. So I've got all this stuff, and I actually saw it wasn't prompted from me specifically. I actually saw an article about this. And I kind of had to ask this question. I'm like, well, why haven't we gotten there yet? Because I feel like, you know, with the sensors that are on the bottom and stuff like that, and having the typical coil that goes around the bottom to make it wirelessly charged, how difficult would it, like kind of what you're saying, how difficult would it be to just make it a universal?
Oh, yeah. I think it'd be very simple.
Clip to it. So that's, I mean, it's not like I'm saying this is coming soon, or it needs to come soon. I wish it would come, but it just kind of makes you think, and like, what would it take? Is it too difficult? Is it something kind of like what you were saying? Is it necessary? I see where you're coming from, because your perception often, well, first off, it's different from mine 90% of the time. And then,
yes. Well, also you test multiple devices. So, and it's possible, because I don't have that experience, I can't really argue for that side, mainly because I'm not aware of it as much.
Well, that's true. But I mean, like, I like your perception. I think the listeners appreciate your perception, because as much as I try to see it from the consumer standpoint, I almost feel like you live that to a day-to-day standpoint of, you know, this is how I see it and this is how it's used. And I don't really see that being a major issue. So I appreciate that part. It's just frustrating for those of us who have had them, or it's like, and the other aspect to it is just, it's a waste of cables, because, you know, if you upgrade, or if the charging clip changes from like an older Samsung generation to a newer one, or a Pixel watch, whatever. There's that aspect to it. So
yeah, sure.
But anyway, I just had to throw that out there, because I felt like, let's get our thinking caps going as we start off this episode, and
totally
go from there. But yeah, you had some interesting, is it AI information, or what was it?
Yeah, so we actually kind of discussed a lot regarding iOS 17 before it released this year, and then it released, and it turned out to be a lot different than we thought it would. We were thinking it was going to be
a lot different.
Yeah, we thought it was, well, we were hoping from some certain rumors that it would actually pertain to it being a sort of fixer-upper, making sure everything was a lot more cohesive, that the entire iOS was a lot less buggy, fixing all that stuff, stabilizing stuff. Yes. It did a little bit of that, but for most of it, it was just additional stuff put into it, which was good. But we have rumors actually, and this is actually coming from a tech analyst that covers Apple supply chains for Hong Kong. His name is Jeff Pu. He says that next year could very well be the year that Apple hones in, and I think they actually have been honing in for a while now. They've just been taking a slower process of cloud-based AI and so-called, quote, edge AI.
On board, yeah.
Yeah. And Ming-Chi Kuo kind of differs a little bit in opinion. He thinks that it's possible it may be actually till in 2025. He's kind of unclear on the timeline. He said that literally a couple months ago. And this could very well be part of iOS 18. So 18 could be the upgrade of AI, if you would like to call it that. So, honestly, I'm kind of the point where I'm really with you in the sense of like, I want there to be that cohesive update where everything is just sort of smoothed over. It just feels more thorough. It feels much better because there's still bugs in this from like iOS 16.
I need a better structure. I need stability. I need something that I can count on.
Absolutely.
I don't need to be seeing bugs in a public release. And I mean, that's stuff we've been talking about episode after episode. So that's nothing new. Yeah. But yeah, and I actually, if I were to kind of throw my perception into this, I feel like they should take iOS 18 and prepare it for iOS 19 for generative AI.
Yes.
But at the same time, take that time to work out any of the bugs. So that way, by the time iOS 19 comes, it's ready to go and there should be at least less bugs to take care of and such. That's what I think. I'm totally willing to wait 2 years for generative AI because let's face it, Apple is so far behind. I don't think 1 year is going to make a difference.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, you look at all of their technology and they've always been far behind. And that's mainly because that's been their choice. That's not because they haven't been able to catch up.
Well, they live by the practice of privacy. So that's the main aspect.
Yeah. And we've said it before, and it's just like, if you keep adding on more stuff, you're gonna not be able to fix that many bugs. And sure, some will be fixed right now and there, but there's even the talk of with 17.1, it never fixed the Wi-Fi issue.
Yeah.
And it's annoying because from a consumer, I want to be able to have a phone every day and it doesn't be perfect because no phones are perfect, but at least have a phone that's consistent, that doesn't have as much issues as it normally does. But yeah, it's kind of annoying, but also pretty cool. I am glad, and I even saw a few comments that people are glad that Apple's taking their time with AI, which is good.
Yes.
I'm at least glad that they're doing that because let's be honest with Apple, every time they do something super quick, it never tends to favor in their side. But
which is kind of funny because they take so long to do stuff, and
then when they actually do it,
there's that aspect to it. So it's like I just like, can you just stay on schedule and do it right, or like what's the issue? But we won't harp on that. But either way, obviously we haven't reached that point where we can get review units weeks ahead before the launch event. But from what we have seen from the event, and more importantly, what others are saying during their limited time experience with the model, the OnePlus Open, it seems to be quite an impressive mark in the foldable market.
For sure.
Bearing in mind that, I mean, obviously, Riley, you can speak to this. They're clearly not for everyone, especially for those that aren't able to muster up the triple-digit price tag that it carries.
Exactly. Yes.
But I mean, I've heard mixed opinions on the cameras. The primary sensor, which uses the pixel stack technology. Some are saying that it's amazing. Others say that it competes well against the other big two in the US, the Pixel and the Z Fold. But I mean, that said, I think that it should be expected that if you're spending that much money on a phone, the camera experience should be as close to flawless as you can get it.
Precisely, I would agree. Yep.
Do you have the specs there for the sensors?
Yes, for the camera sensors. So for the main sensor, they've used a Sony LYT T808. It's a pixel stacked. And the sensor size is 1.443. The megapixels are 48. And just from a face value, this thing actually looked really good. From the first images they shown, I was very skeptical because it seemed way too like post-processed and edited and like normally a lot of them do. And then you had that one lady that's a photographer that came out and explained everything in actually a lot of detail and a lot of depth, I think. And I'm not a photographer, so I really can't speak to all that. But when she actually took those photos, it was true. I mean, they really do. The main camera works very well.
I think the biggest thing that I took away, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at everyone's opinion, or at least a lot of the main reviewers out there, and look at their opinion and say, okay, what did they see? How did it compare? Just in the camera section alone. Because I feel like that's really important. Anybody can make a foldable, it seems like nowadays, and have extra specs, which we'll get to some of that in a little bit. But I feel like the camera is really important. And I think the main sensor did a really good job as well. I'm sure time will progress where things, updates are released and it maybe improves. Who knows? But yeah, outside of that, I think they definitely improved the megapixels on the additional sensors, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they did. And that one, the telephoto is actually 64 megapixels, while the ultrawide is 48. The telephoto uses OmniVision OV64B with a 3x optical zoom and a 6x. And those zooms, by the way, wow. I was pretty blown away by just how much detail was able to be shown in that mountain view or whatever. And they really switched your perception when they brought in that 0.6 ultra wide at the end. And I was like, wow, that's pretty good. Pretty blown away by that.
I think even there's one of the reviews that we saw was Michael Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Mobile. He actually did some zoom ins that looked really good. And I was pretty impressed by this. And that's what really shocked me, is because I was very apprehensive about the OnePlus foldable that we were going to see. Because that's their biggest problem, is they can give you all the battery, they can give you the hardware specs for, RAM and such, and they can make it look really great, even from a design standpoint, which I have some controversy points to that. But it was always the camera department that we had problems with, that they weren't quite competing where they should be, or that level that they should be at against the big three. And I think the cool part, which I'll go back to that main real quick, was that they didn't go with the IMX series because the thickness of it would have protruded even further out the back. And so they went with the, the LTY to use that stacked pixel technology to help with that and the lighting. So that was really, I was like, okay, they actually thought this crap through.
Yeah, the light that's able to be perceived through the lens, it's basically double stacked, which is why it's called pixel stacked. And I was like, okay, that's actually really interesting, because normally you have to have a larger sensor. And in my mind, I always thought, like, if you're going to increase the quality of camera, less grain, more sharpness, you need to have a bigger sensor.
Yeah.
I mean, OnePlus proved them wrong. That's proved my perception wrong, or Sony did, I guess you could say. But yeah, really cool. Honestly, the cameras on this thing are just great for a fold. They're better, I think, than the Pixel Fold and even the
Z Fold 5.
The Z Fold 5. Yeah, they're much better because their quality is just so smooth, really well looked. I mean, I don't know if you had any major issues.
It was, I don't know. I felt like it held its own. I'll just put it that way. It held its own, where you didn't feel like, okay, I definitely need to pick the, Z Fold over this, or I need to pick the Pixel Fold over this. I felt like it was, you could look at all three of them and think, that one looks good. That one I feel like has, some good color contrasting, some HDR, maybe some more clarity when it zooms in, whatever it was. I felt like there wasn't one that was, I absolutely hate it.
Right.
The funny thing is I actually would love to see, which I don't know if this will ever happen. I would love to see how you can incorporate what OnePlus has done here with the post-image processing that Google offers. That would be really amazing. I was actually kind of thinking
about that. Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be beautiful.
But anyway, we'll wrap it out with the cameras as far as, so we have the internal selfie is a 20 megapixel and the external cover selfie is a 32 megapixel. So overall, I feel like they did a really good job in trying to balance everything out. There's a lot to like about this, just from a general standpoint. I think we mentioned quite a few specs over the rumors, but I'll hit them real quick. 16 gigs of RAM, 512 storage, Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. And then just some of the stuff that we saw, like the internal structure, very solid build quality.
Yes.
I know they emphasize the whole entire aerospace material, like the titanium alloy, carbon fiber, zirconium, all that jazz. And we'll actually post this in the description, but Mr. Mobile actually did a pre-video to his review about the phone being tested in the factory and such. Yep. So that I feel like was even more critical, because it kind of gave you an insight into maybe not even just how OnePlus made it, but how it's pretty common that, Google or Samsung would build these foldables as well.
Yes.
And I think the biggest thing that got us all was minimal crease.
I know, right? I was really shocked by that too.
Yeah, I was not really expecting that, because it felt like this was an extremely well-rounded product.
Here's the thing is, like, I would agree with you too. However, I would also like to say that OnePlus has a sister company, Oppo.
Yeah.
And I definitely would not doubt at all that they took a lot of the inspiration from that phone and put it into this one. So I feel like you could, I feel like you could argue on both sides, like, yes, this is their first generation. It's a really good one at that. But you can also argue on this other hand that, like, they took a lot from Oppo.
It's been out in the field already.
Yes. So I think both can be true at the same time. It's a great first generation, but there's a lot of stuff that can be taken from that. But
yes, yeah. And then, of course, they have the typical, fingerprint reader and the power button, which that's pretty common nowadays with foldables. So I'd kind of be bummed if they didn't have that, just because unlocking a phone on a foldable can be a little bit more.
It's very quick,
just because of very quick. And I think the biggest thing is being that it's kind of, I don't want to say bulky, because I feel like the Pixel Fold is bulky, but being that it's almost like a regular phone.
Yeah.
The weight
I was just going to say
was impressive as well.
Very impressive. Yeah. I was shocked. And that's obviously on the Voyager Black only, because they use that pleather in the back. So that takes away 10 ounces.
The glass.
But even still, that's very impressive, because that's unmatched towards Pixel and
especially Pixel.
Especially Pixel, yes, that thing's
because that one was just heavy and bulky.
And Samsung, and I think even the Magic V2, I think that one's about the same, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, lightweight, and it kind of resembles the sort of candy bar phone where it's not super thick, but it still holds that similar weight, even better than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which is extremely impressive. And it was actually kind of funny, because my wife was watching this with me, and both of us were about to say the exact same thing. We're so glad titanium's on the inside instead of the outside on this phone, because you still get that weight loss without having to worry about any scratches or dents like another certain phone, of which we will not say or discuss for lack of time. But very impressive for that.
What do you think about the virtual canvas? Because I felt like the internal software, that was well thought through as well.
Oh, that was genius. I've seen that sort of moving around those desktop parts in that sort of mode where it's like you move it and you have to be very careful where you put it. But with this, a lot of efficiency can be done with that. And that's something I've never really seen with another phone, especially a Fold, where there's just, you can do so much work around your work efficiency increases by a whole lot, because you're able to do a lot more in the phone, but it's also done in a way that's clean and organized.
It's intuitive. You can understand it. It makes sense.
It's not stressful. I loved this. This is one of my favorite things that I saw about this phone, with regards to videos that I watched and, the actual event. But yeah, I loved that for sure.
I mean, I know there's a lot to say about this, and I know that I'm sure come a few weeks from now, we're probably going to find some issues, maybe internal or whatever, or maybe there's some software bugs that are going to surface. But overall, I have to say that on first impression from the event and from what we're seeing and the reactions, this really challenges the competition to be like, okay, we just can't throw out a foldable anymore. We have to offer something that is compelling for the consumer beyond just the screen can fold. We're past that. Samsung's been past that for 5 generations, and they still have a crease, for crying out loud. Or I should say a noticeable crease.
Exactly.
So
yes,
that's really what I took from this, and I really wish I could test this. I've got quite a few other products that I have to go through and test before I could probably even get to this one.
How about the price though? $1,700.
$1,700. Yeah.
It's expensive, and this is still an issue that every single reviewer said it's still too high. But But the thing about this, and they offer this for anyone who wants this phone, trade in any phone and you get $200 back and even some other credits from like Amazon or whatever.
Yeah.
And that could be, and it goes up to $1,000. So basically that's already $200 off with any phone, which brings it right down to $1,500. Still a bit too much, but that's close to what you'd expect from an iPhone 15 Pro Max. So yeah, pricing is, it's all right depending on how you look at it.
It's about the max that I would see. I'm glad they didn't go over, but then again, OnePlus is not necessarily one to go over. They always try to stay competitive with pricing.
They do, yes.
And I think with that trade, I believe that's through their website though.
Yes, that is.
I'm not sure. Yeah. So, but I mean, that's still great to have though, just to see like, okay, I can at least get a minimum of $200 in a trade-in value on virtually any phone, and then kind of bring that down to help with, okay, now I have this foldable. And I think that's the key thing is like, it's no longer just about bragging rights to say, I own a foldable. Like, how does it impact your life? And like we were saying with the productivity, that's the biggest thing. Like
exactly.
This is for the power user. And so I think the power user is okay with that price. Mainstream consumers, that's you and I for the most part right now. And so we're kind of looking at like, oh my gosh, this is pretty crazy. But I mean, for those people that are trying to stay on top of things and have that productive lifestyle with work and whatever.
Yes.
It really does check a lot of those boxes. So a couple things I didn't like about it real quick. One was that the alert slider is pitched way too high on the side of the phone. And that
that's a good point.
Almost as if OnePlus is daring you to reach that far to use the button. I'm not really sure what the internal layout is that caused them to do that, or if it was just they wanted to make it high enough that it wouldn't be confused with another button. I have no idea. I'm not really sure. But
yeah, I don't know.
The other thing was that the camera housing on the back is a bit of a point of controversy and something that I'm not the biggest fan of. Some probably won't care. Others may love it. I'm neither of the two.
I got you.
For starters, they put one of the sensors at the top of the circle instead of in the middle right. So if you look at it, it's almost giving that illusion that there's like a sideways smiley face on the camera, being that it's in like a circle.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So well, yeah, I mean, and I was like, why in the world did they do that? And then the other aspect of that is it has a decently thick, quote unquote, brushed metal ring around the housing, and it just makes it feel that much bigger. And I'm sure it's probably due to like protection against the glass shield and whatnot, but I just didn't feel like it actually benefited the overall aesthetics of the rear. And then, of course, you have that flash that's just randomly placed up in the top left outside of the circle. So that's not as bad, but it's there.
Yeah, I kind of would agree with you there. I think I agreed with one of the reviewers that I was listening to when he said that the OnePlus 11 did it really well, where it wasn't too out there. It was a little smaller, and it was sort of smoothed over on the left side.
Yeah.
I wish they would have done that here, but maybe they had to make some modifications to increase that. It's like, if this is true, which I don't know what it is, would you rather have a better camera and this big sensor, or a less better camera and a smaller sensor? So, and I feel like you kind of have to make, pick your battles there with this phone. So yeah,
and that's why it's just one of those things at the end that you're like, okay, this is what I wish they could have done, but like to your point, it's what can be done.
Yes.
And I think to your point where you said, could they move it over to the left? Obviously the 11 is not a foldable. It doesn't have to worry about a hinge. So there's less mechanisms there that need to be addressed when, throwing in camera sensors and whatnot. So there's just a lot to contemplate when it comes to development and design and stuff like that. So, but those are just a couple things that stood out to me. And if that's what stood out to me, at least this far, we're on a pretty good
that is true
pace for a really nice foldable, and something that could be even more improved with future iterations and generations to come. So moving on from the star of the show here with the OnePlus Open, the FCC is doing some interesting things in that they're requiring major telecommunication companies to be more transparent about pricing, packages, speeds, and whatnot. And it was kind of funny because they threw it in this sort of nutrition facts, quote unquote, layout of promotions, pricing, like I said, speeds and stuff like that. And it's like they're treating these companies as children. Like, if you guys can't do it, this is what you need to bring forth to help consumers be more at ease about what they're getting. And in my opinion, I think it's good. I like the fact that I can have more transparency and understand exactly, okay, here's the promotion, here's how long it's going to last, here's, what the price is going to be when the promotion ends, et cetera, et cetera. The problem I have is it doesn't address one of the biggest issues that one of the largest companies in the US takes advantage of. Charter has this nasty habit of increasing the pricing year after year. There's not even promotions.
Yes,
year
that's
after year,
true.
they will increase the pricing by like $5 or $10. And so a person who's been with Charter for like 6 years is paying $20 or $25 more than a person who's had it for, after 1 year. And that's my biggest issue. And I hate it because it trains consumers to be a pain in the butt so they can get the price back down to what it was originally.
Yes.
Not promo, but the original base price of what everyone else should be paying.
Correct.
And I'm like, why are you trying to train people? Because you literally have to go through like the retention center and stuff like that. And we've talked about this before. It really irritates me, and I don't feel like companies should be treating consumers that way and increasing the prices year after year after year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just
agreed.
keep it the same way, especially when you know that you have to be a pain in the butt and you can get that price back down. Just keep it that way. Why do we have to do that? Why is that such a problem for this company to treat customers like crap, especially when they're the ones that have been with you longer than the rest? So,
yeah,
but I'm not sure if you had any positive or negative takeaways from that. But I mean, hopefully, maybe some more steps will improve how that transparency works.
Yeah, I have a quick little thing, but I did want to agree with you there. I do think it's a disservice to customers when you pull some stunts like that.
Yeah, it's
almost rude in a sense because you're disrespecting those guys, like you said, that have been there for a while. And I just, because it's gonna happen where they're gonna lower the price, obviously, because they don't want to lose anybody. Well, if you don't want to lose anybody, then don't lower the price at all. Like, it's common sense. It really is. And people that take advantage of that is just, it's horrible. But I did want to mention this one little line here. Quote, in August, cable and telecom companies pushed back on the FCC's orders to include the disclosure, arguing that the labels would only confuse customers. I think that's a bunch of bogus. Like, really, you're going to say that
it's so hard to be transparent with these people.
I know.
Like, that's just going to be so confused. I'm like, come on, people.
Just shut up. You can read between the lines.
The FCC is treating them like children because they're acting like children.
Exactly.
I mean, really,
yes.
You can't be transparent with consumers. You think it's going to be that confusing? We're not idiots. If anything, it's more confusing to us because we're wondering why the price is going up $5 every year.
And this kind of takes out that middleman of trying to figure out which one is the policy that's best for you. And maybe you do want the higher tier. That's great for you, but some people may not be able to afford that. And especially if you're increasing the price $5 every year, that's even another thing you add on. And it's just when you do this, it's really good. And the thing about this is it's going to happen anyway. I feel like in response to this, these companies should not be fighting against. In fact, they should be adding more, so that way it looks like to consumers, oh, you guys are actually putting even more into this. I trust you even more than I did when the FCC was trying to require this of you.
The funny thing is when I look at this, it makes me think of Show Me the Carfax.
Yes.
Because when I go to a website for, telecommunications, I'm going to see something like the FCC Nutrition Facts or something like that, or I'm sure they'll name it something else when it actually comes to fruition. But, and I'm going to see that, and then I get to see the comparison of this stuff. And I think part of the problem is it's going to feed into the competition of, oh, this company is lower or whatnot, and it's going to make it easier for people to leave or go. But at the same time, when you think about it, not everyone has like access to certain companies like AT&T's fiber or Charter's cable. It's like, so there's limitations to it all, but we'll have to see how that all unfolds. But before we transition to the last topic, it kind of leans into the closeout. Tesla officially launches their API for Tesla onboard software. basically eliciting the ability for a future quote unquote app store.
Oh, okay.
And I'm kind of curious how this is going to, lay out in the future and how things will develop. But it's definitely worth noting just because I think there's going to be a limited amount of developers on this when it does kind of
I would agree.
Evolve, just because I know how Musk is and I know how things are going to take place with. And a lot of this is going to be based around businesses and such and how it's communicating with the cars and the employees and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure how well this is going to integrate with like the consumer level and basic apps and stuff that you and I would use. But
Right.
it's just worth noting that, that the API is actually official. So there'll probably be more information on that in the future. In either case, that transitions right into a interesting topic on cars or a car.
Yeah, the Apple car, to be more specific. Basically, Apple has been given the patent, and this is a broken record at this point, but patents don't mean anything necessarily. It could be just a hoax, and they're just wanting the patent, so it may not actually become true. But Apple's claimed a patent for using Vision Pro to see outside of an Apple car or other self-driving vehicle without windows. This is kind of a scary almost thing, and it probably won't happen just because of how insane this idea is. But I'll just kind of read these two paragraphs to you because this comes actually straight from the horse's mouth. So, a VR system may include at least one VR controller that generates virtual content for projection to passengers, and at least one projector mechanism for projecting or displaying virtual frames to at least one window of the vehicle to thus provide 3D virtual views to passengers. In either case, the 3D virtual views may include views of the passenger's environment, including the environment outside the vehicle, augmented with the virtual content, e.g. virtual objects, virtual tags, etc., or alternatively may provide immersive VR environments that may include visual cues of the environment outside the vehicle. It goes on to say, embodiments of the VR system may integrate inputs from a number of sources, including but not limited to vehicle internal and external sensors, e.g. depth cameras, LiDAR, and video cameras. Vehicle HMD inertial measurements, units, vehicles control systems such as throttle, control, braking, steering, navigation, and active suspension systems, world maps, 3D models, video, audio, and other information from external sources. So it seems like Apple's actually put a lot of thought into this specific patent, and whether this becomes true or not, it's interesting kind of discuss what would it be if you were actually able to see outside your car while it's driving? Hopefully not the actual driver, because that's just kind of dangerous. But that technology, I see it being plausible. Definitely not right now, obviously. I don't think it's there yet, but it's interesting to consider all of that because, I mean, I wouldn't even be able to think that this was possible like a few years ago, but now this is kind of coming to that point of reality, no pun intended. So I don't know what you think about this. I think it's a pretty cool concept.
I think this is a patent that I don't think this is going to go to the warehouse.
I don't think so either.
I think this is something that will actually happen maybe 5 years, probably 7 years down the road. It depends because we know how Apple is. It takes them a while to do things. But something like this, they are envisioning a world that, like I said before, it kind of brings me back to like the whole Audi thing with iRobot. They're envisioning a world where it's meant to encourage a luxurious feel.
Yes.
Something that we have felt that we don't need because it's too far out. It's probably going to be one heck of a price tag. And it's something that we probably don't trust.
Correct.
And so they're going to go through a lot of development. They're going to go through a lot of phases. And we've already heard about, all the people that are on the team, that this is kind of behind the scenes and stuff. There's that aspect to it. The one thing that I liked that was noted in that article, I don't think it's worth like quoting or anything. It's more like a paraphrase, but they said that they would prefer a way where the windows would be dimmed versus actually having a windowless vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually like that because it allows you to switch from virtual reality to actual reality.
Yes.
There actually needs to be literal windows that can dim, and then they can be screens in of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly plausible, but it's going to take a lot.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, and that's why I say it's going to be quite a few years off, because I don't think we're ready for the pricing.
No.
And if some are, then it questions who is this for? And I think you can kind of assume, like I said, it's going to be more for the people who are, leaning towards the luxurious aspects of life.
Yeah.
And there's probably other things that fall into this that we're not even thinking about right now, and how that plays into this quote unquote vehicle. But it could be really cool, because you could just be on a ride and stuff like that, and going somewhere, and kids in the back could just enjoy it. The motion sickness that they talked about was kind of interesting, how they're going to alleviate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one that gets motion sickness. However, I'm going to say that I don't trust that, because
the VR headset
it's going to take a lot to actually counteract what you're seeing versus what you're feeling. And because it's going to take a lot, there's going to be a lot of cost accounted for it. So,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, those are my thoughts on it. Like I said, I don't think this one's going to be pushed to the back burner or anything like that. I think it's going to happen. It's a matter of when, because we've talked about how many patents we have not seen come to fruition. I mean, there's been stuff with the Apple Watch. There's been stuff with iPhones. I think the Apple glasses are still something that we could possibly see. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of my take on it. I'm not sure if you had any other closing thoughts on it, but yeah.
No, not really. I'm still excited for this Apple car, even though won't be able to afford it, but it'll be cool to see the final product eventually.
I just want the basic stuff. I'm not even asking for like all of the VR crap.
Yeah, there's going to be a basic, then a Pro Max, all that stuff we know. But
Pro Max is like the SUV for those who aren't. No, I'm just kidding. But in either case, that will close out this week's episode of Debatable. We'll definitely put some links in the description below for the OnePlus Open, maybe a key review that we felt like was worth sharing with you guys. And I know probably a handful of you can't even afford that model, but at least we know where the foldable market is going towards, and what we can look forward to, and possibly how we can see other people, other companies, Google, Samsung, Apple, whenever that comes into play, can up their game. So with that being said, we will catch you guys in the next one. This is JD and Riley signing off.
Peace out.